Hello everyone! I thought today we could chat our way through another classic actor filmography. I am very selective about which actors I choose, which is probably why so far I've only done 2 actors. It seems silly to pick someone if I've only seen a small fraction of the total number of films they made, and I also don't want to pick someone that maybe made movies for 4 decades, but I've only seen movies from one of those decades. The thing is, there aren't a lot of actors for whom I can say, oh yes, I've seen every single one of his movies, or I've seen half of her movies, so that makes it difficult. But there are some actors about whom I think I can talk with a little degree of confidence, and I've seen most of their most well-known movies, and I've seen a sizable portion of their work from a large span of time. Are there going to be movies that come up that are really important movies in this person's career that I haven't seen and I can't talk about? Yes, unfortunately that is going to be the case. But if you want to know the truth, I don't know what my filming schedule is going to be like for the next 6 weeks. Everything's a little bit different around here, and this makes me sound like a diva, but I can't perform under certain conditions, and well, the conditions are right today. I don't have anything else ready, and these filmography chats are something that I can kind of just do without any preparation. Anyway, enough excuses, let's get on with it. The subject that I've chosen for today's filmography chat is so well known that I don't think he needs any introduction. He's probably one of the most famous movie stars ever. Archibald Leach, more commonly known as Cary Grant. Cary Grant lived from 1904 to 1986, and according to IMDb.com, which is where I will be going through the filmography, he is credited with 77 acting roles. I have seen 24 of them, if my counting was correct, which is not even half, but I feel like it's a decent enough representation, and I have seen all of the films that IMDb says he's most known for. I've seen a few of them multiple times, so I feel okay about this. It's not the ideal situation, but it's fine. Unfortunately, we get off to a very rocky start here because I haven't seen any of his earliest films. He started in the pre-Code era. His first film was 1932's This Is the Night, which I haven't seen. Sinners in the Sun, Singapore Sue, Merrily We Go to Hell, Devil in the Deep, Blonde Venus, Hot Saturday, Madam Butterfly, She Done Him Wrong. I haven't seen any of those ones. I did see part of She Done Him Wrong, which is one of a couple films he did with Mae West. He then did The Woman Accused, The Eagle and the Hawk, and Gambling Ship before co-starring opposite Mae West again in I'm No Angel, and I believe that I'm No Angel is one of the films that really kicked off his career. It was after that he started to get bigger starring roles opposite more prominent leading ladies. That is, after he played the Mock Turtle in Alice in Wonderland. But even though these were movies that were making him a bigger star, I still haven't seen any of them. 30 Day Princess, Born to Be Bad, Kiss and Make Up, Ladies Should Listen, Enter Madam, Wings in the Dark. The Last Outpost sounds familiar, but I don't think I've seen it. Maybe I should, because it's Cary Grant opposite Claude Rains, and I love Claude Rains. A short film, Pirate Party on Catalina Isle, Sylvia Scarlett, Big Brown Eyes, Susie, The Amazing Adventure, Wedding Present, When You're in Love. Haven't seen any of those. 1937, he was in a pretty big film, Topper, opposite Constance Bennett. It is a ghost comedy, and I believe it spawned a few sequels, although Grant was not in any of them. And I regret to say that even though I've wanted to for a very long time, I still haven't seen Topper. We taped it several years ago, and I just haven't gotten around to it. So far, this filmography chat is not so good. 1937 was the first of many good years for Cary Grant. He made Topper, and then he was in The Toast of New York, and then he was in The Awful Truth. And this is the first movie on the list that I have seen, and it's a good one, and I've seen most of the ones after that for a good long stretch. So, thank goodness, I was about to scrap the whole idea. The Awful Truth is the first of 3 films, I believe, he made opposite Irene Dunne, and it is a comedy, a romantic comedy, and it is, I wouldn't say it's a screwball comedy, but it's pretty close to it. No, it's pretty much a screwball comedy. It's a nutty movie. I admit I do get it confused sometimes with My Favorite Wife, where Cary Grant and Irene Dunne are a married couple that has become separated for a different reason, and they keep messing up each other's chances for happiness with someone else. In The Awful Truth, they're going through a divorce, and Irene Dunne is already planning to marry or contemplating marriage with Ralph Bellamy's character, who is a complete bumpkin and country hick. I think he's from Oklahoma, maybe, and he's like the polar opposite of Cary Grant. It's a very silly movie, but very entertaining. In 1938, he was in what I would probably say is my second favorite of his comedies, Bringing Up Baby, which he starred in opposite Katharine Hepburn. He plays a paleontologist who is looking for grant money to fund his museum. Katharine Hepburn plays this crazy woman who shows up everywhere, latches onto him. She gets him to come to her rescue under false pretenses because she has a pet leopard, which is insane. She calls him on the phone and is like, I need you to come here, and he won't do it. To get him to come, Katharine Hepburn's character pretends that she's being mauled by her pet leopard, so of course he's like, Susan! I remember her name. And he rushes over there, and then she's fine, but everything goes completely haywire when the leopard goes missing, and then it turns out there's another leopard on the loose, and it's just completely nuts. It's a screwball comedy. That probably goes without saying. It's really funny. There are so many classic moments and quotable lines, and I definitely recommend you check it out if you've never seen it. I've considered reviewing it before, but comedies I find are difficult to review because it's hard to not want to make it just a clip show, and a clip show is not a review. So this is me just saying, hey, check out Bringing Up Baby if you've never seen it before. It's really funny, and it's top-notch Cary Grant. And by the way, speaking of funny movies that I'd like to review sometime, Bringing Up Baby, as well as other screwball comedies, but especially this one, inspired a Peter Bogdanovich film from 1967, I believe it is, called What's Up, Doc, and it is one of the funniest movies I have ever seen, starring Barbra Streisand and Ryan O'Neal, and it has very much the similar premise that there's this nerdy guy who is just obsessed with his little project. For Cary Grant, it's dinosaur bones. For Ryan O'Neal, it's igneous rocks. And then this woman comes along who just won't leave him alone and just starts ruining his life. It's such a funny movie. I can't recommend that one enough. Anyway, Bringing Up Baby, it's a great movie. You should see it. We all saw it when we were little kids, and so it's one of like our family quotable movies. His next film, also released in 1938, again paired him opposite Katharine Hepburn, Holiday. I did a mini review of Holiday, so I guess I'll link to that in the description. Two things I always remember most about Holiday. The first is that I really like Lou Ayres' supporting performance, and second is that it is just such a great showcase for Cary Grant's acrobatic skills. He and Katharine Hepburn do some great acrobatic stuff upstairs in the playroom, and it's one of the highlights of the film. In 1939, that most awesome of years in classic Hollywood, he made 3 films, and I have seen 2 of them. Gunga Din, is it Gunga Din or Gunga Din? You're a better man than I am, Gunga Din. I think it's Gunga Din. Gunga Din is based on a Rudyard Kipling story or poem. I'm not a Rudyard Kipling expert. I think it's a poem, and it stars Cary Grant with Victor McLaglen and Douglas Fairbanks Jr. It is an adventure with kind of a complicated plot that I can't recall in great detail, but they are 3 British soldiers who join up with an Indian played by Sam Jaffe, and they go to stop a thing from happening. In my opinion, it's one of those movies that's not so much about the destination, but about the journey. After that, he was in Only Angels Have Wings, which is an adventurous drama, I guess you would say. He stars opposite Jean Arthur, with supporting performances from Thomas Mitchell, Rita Hayworth, and Richard Barthelmess. Cary Grant plays the manager of an air freight company, and he ends up having to make decisions about whether or not he should risk his pilots' lives. It was a really good movie. I had no idea what it was about when I watched it several years ago. It had some humor, but it also made me cry, which I was not expecting. Really great supporting performance from Thomas Mitchell. Thomas Mitchell was just owning 1939. He delivered so many fantastic performances. Only Angels Have Wings, Gone with the Wind, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I'm pretty sure Stagecoach. Oh my goodness, just everything he did in 1939 was great. But we're not talking about Thomas Mitchell right now. So that's a good movie you should check out, and of those 1939 films that I've listed, it's probably the least known today. The third film he was in that year is In Name Only, and I don't know anything about that one. According to the picture, he starred opposite Carole Lombard and Kay Francis, which makes me feel like it must be a love triangle movie. 1940, he was in 4 films, and I've seen 3 of them. Whew. First one is His Girl Friday, which is another great comedy, but you gotta pay attention when you watch that one. The dialogue is so fast. It is a newspaper film in which Cary Grant stars opposite Rosalind Russell, and they are a couple going through a divorce. And I think, is Ralph Bellamy in this one too? Let's click and find out. I'm pretty sure that Ralph Bellamy is the other guy in this movie, just like he was the other guy. Just like he was the other guy in The Awful Truth. Very funny film, witty dialogue, fast-paced, with a very famous striped outfit from Rosalind Russell. After that, he was in My Favorite Wife, which I mentioned before, and that's the one where Cary Grant and Irene Dunne were married, and there was a plane crash or something, and she's believed to be dead. So, time goes by, he meets someone else, Gail Patrick, and they're gonna get married, and then all of a sudden, Irene Dunne shows up. Then he was in The Howards of Virginia, which is a Revolutionary era film, and I've never seen it. Turner Classic Movies plays it pretty much every 4th of July, but I never watch it. When they play 1776, I usually manage to catch at least some of that every single year, but I never make time for The Howards of Virginia. You know what it is? I have kind of a hard time with Cary Grant in period costume. I don't know, picturing him in anything but a classic 1940s suit is just weird to me. And the last thing he was in 1940, again paired opposite Katharine Hepburn, was The Philadelphia Story. It's a very famous film in which Katharine Hepburn is a wealthy socialite. She was married to Cary Grant, they divorced, and now she's going to be marrying some guy. I don't even remember who plays the guy in the movie. He's not that important, and it's going to be a big society to do. The story really begins, though, with the arrival of these 2 cynical reporters, played by Jimmy Stewart and Ruth Hussey. This has got to be one of my favorite Jimmy Stewart performances, which is funny because it's only a supporting role, really, and he's starred in so many great movies, but he is so stinking funny here. He has so many great lines. He's just so dry and cranky. One of the highlights of the film definitely is the scene where Jimmy Stewart has gotten super drunk and he goes to Cary Grant's house. Cary Grant's character is named C.K. Dexter Haven, and Jimmy Stewart shows up there and he's just banging on the door and he's like, C.K. Dexter Haven! Cary Grant opens the door and lets him in, even though it's the middle of the night. Jimmy Stewart is like, we gotta have a serious talk, and sits him down for a discussion, except it's not completely incoherent, but it's almost there. It's just such a treat to see these 2 stars in this scene together, where Jimmy Stewart was doing a lot of ad-libbing, and massive props to Cary Grant. He just rolls with it, and you can tell that, like, he's trying not to laugh. It's such a good scene. I don't even consider The Philadelphia Story one of my favorite movies. I've seen it a couple times, and it's fine. I like it well enough. It's not one of my favorite stories, and I find Katharine Hepburn's character kind of irritating. The movie was remade in the 50s, High Society, with Cole Porter music and Grace Kelly, Bing Crosby, and Frank Sinatra, and I didn't really like that movie that much, but I think what makes the Philadelphia story so worth watching is the cast. The leads, as well as the supporting cast. There are lots of big names in here. Next up is 1941's Penny Serenade, which is the third film that Cary Grant starred in opposite Irene Dunne, but it's different from the other two. I would describe it as much more of a drama. Not that it's without some comedy. They are both actors who were proficient at comedy, both physical and verbal comedy, and they certainly bring that into it. But it's also a tearjerker. They play a married couple and they want to have a baby, and the film follows the ups and downs of that story. Also in 1941, Cary Grant starred in the first of 4 films he would do with director Alfred Hitchcock, Suspicion, in which he stars opposite Joan Fontaine, and he plays a very, very charming ne'er-do-well who marries Joan Fontaine, and then she starts to wonder if he really loves her and he didn't just marry her for her money, and maybe he's trying to kill her. I have not reviewed Suspicion yet, but I am going to eventually, so I won't go into too much detail here. I will say this though, Grant's performance is one that has me constantly changing my mind about how I feel toward his character. He is charming, but he is also kind of a heel, and then there are some moments where everything's a little ambiguous, and that's intentional. Hitchcock is trying to plant seeds of doubt in your mind, just like seeds of doubt are planted in Fontaine's mind, and the way you watch a scene, the interpretation of it is entirely based on feeling, on what you think might be going through a character's mind that you really have no idea. In 1942, he was in The Talk of the Town, which again put him with Jean Arthur, but added into the mix was my hero, Ronald Colman, and I talked about this film for a couple of minutes in my video titled, what did I call it? My 5 favorite Ronald Colman films and then some. I really enjoyed this movie. It is very funny. It's just a real treat to see these 3 actors together. Jean Arthur was always really funny, and yet she could also be really sensitive and very sweet. Ronald Colman, not exactly someone I associate with comedy, so anytime he does anything that's funny, it's like, well, it's partly funny because it's funny, but it's also funny because it's him doing the funny thing, and that's kind of unexpected. And in this film, he plays a very serious judge who is a Supreme Court nominee, and he doesn't want anything to happen in his life to upset that. Cary Grant comes along, and he is a fugitive suspected of arson, and they both end up staying in the same house. I don't want to say anything else. I don't want to spoil the film. It's a good movie. Another one where I feel like a good deal of my enjoyment of it comes from the cast, but it has some really good moments. Also in 42, he worked opposite Ginger Rogers in Once Upon a Honeymoon, and honestly, I can't figure out if I've seen this movie or not. I want to say yes, but I feel like I'm confusing it with something else. Ginger Rogers made a movie with Jimmy Stewart, right? Called... Hold on. Yes, in 1938, Ginger Rogers starred opposite Jimmy Stewart in Vivacious Lady, which I have seen, and I think that's what I'm thinking of. Although I'm sure the 2 movies don't really have much to do with each other at all, but whatever, that's how my mind works. In 1943, he was in Mr. Lucky, which I haven't seen. He was also in a war film, Destination Tokyo. It's one of very few World War II films that Cary Grant was in, but if you're gonna be in only a couple war films, it might as well be really good ones, and Destination Tokyo is a very good one. It's a sub-movie. It was a very serious, dramatic role. The movie has some very tense moments. In 1944, he was in a couple of short films, and then in a movie called Once Upon a Time, which I don't know anything about, and then not just one of my favorite Cary Grant movies, but one of my favorite movies, period, Arsenic and Old Lace, which is just such a great movie. Anybody who hasn't seen Arsenic and Old Lace, just go watch it, please. Like, I tell I have told so many people that they should watch this movie. It is a Frank Capra film starring Cary Grant and Priscilla Lane and Raymond Massey and Peter Lorre. The cast is just amazing, and it is one of the funniest movies ever. It is a screwball comedy, but also a horror comedy set on Halloween, and it is just so much fun. I did a review of it several years ago. If you want to watch that video, there's a link in the description. Also in 44, he was in None But the Lonely Heart, which is a film I've heard of plenty of times, but I have never seen, and I didn't even know what it was about until I just read this description, which says, when an itinerant reluctantly returns home to help his sickly mother run her shop, they're both tempted to turn to crime to help make ends meet. And it co-stars Ethel Barrymore, and now I'm thinking, why haven't I seen this? Because that sounds pretty good. 1945, it seems he took a year off. I don't know the story behind that. I don't know if it had to do with the war or what. Sorry. And then after the war was over, he went right back into it. Actually, the next one listed is Without Reservations, which I would have said he's definitely not in. It says he has an uncredited role as himself, so I don't remember that. The film stars Claudette Colbert opposite John Wayne, which is an interesting pairing, and it was an unusual John Wayne film. It's not a Western, it's not a war film, and but it's good. I liked the movie. His first proper role in 46, though, was the Cole Porter biopic Night and Day, which I haven't seen, and then after that, he was in Notorious, the second Hitchcock film that he was in, and I've seen it several times. Cary Grant opposite Ingrid Bergman with a great supporting role from Claude Rains. I have not reviewed this one yet either as part of my Hitchcock review series, although I've gotten a lot of requests for it. I think my two most requested Hitchcock reviews are Notorious and To Catch a Thief, which both star Cary Grant. And I guess considering how many Hitchcock reviews I have done, the fact that I've only done one of the 4 Cary Grant films is a little strange. 1947, he did 2 films, and I've seen both of them, although I'm not sure if I should count The Bachelor and The Bobby Soxer, because I know I saw some of it, but I was very young, and I don't know that I saw the whole thing. I would keep meaning to watch the whole thing sometime, but it just never happens. The Bachelor and The Bobby Soxer stars Cary Grant opposite Myrna Loy and Shirley Temple. Shirley Temple at this point was an older teen, and in the film she is crazy in love with Cary Grant's character, even though he's much older than her and he would be a much better suit for her sister, I think it is, her older sister, I'm not sure. This tells me that I should watch the movie again, who's played by Myrna Loy. It's a comedy, in case you couldn't tell. The other film he made in 1947 is The Bishop's Wife, which is a Christmas film. A lot of people love this movie. I did not. I thought that Cary Grant's character was pretty dull. Cary Grant plays an angel, I believe, who is sent down to Earth to give inspiration to a bishop, played by David Niven, and he connects with the bishop's wife, played by Loretta Young. This is not the first film that Loretta Young and Cary Grant did together. The other one was a film in the mid-30s. If I say I didn't care for The Bishop's Wife, that does not mean that I didn't like it. Don't misinterpret me. It just means I felt lukewarm toward it. And a lot of that is because Cary Grant's character is... he's just too perfect. And I can just hear you saying, like, well, what's wrong with that? But it just was perfection to the point of blandness. And, well, I like it better when Cary Grant is kind of crazy, kind of kooky. 1948, he did another comedy starring opposite Myrna Loy, Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House, which is one of those movies that's funny, but also a little bit frustrating. It's frustrating, and yet it's very realistic. They're trying to build this house, and Myrna Loy, his wife, wants everything to be really nice, and the project just starts growing to mammoth proportions and getting way out of hand and totally over budget. And they have a friend, I think he's a friend, I don't think he's the contractor, I could be wrong about that, it's been a couple of years since I saw it, played by Melvin Douglas, and he is like an additional thorn in Cary Grant's side because he's kind of like the I told you so character, and also he's a little bit too interested in Myrna Loy. The last film he did in 1948 was Every Girl Should Be Married, and I don't know anything about that movie, and I'm sorry to say I haven't seen the next string of movies. This is a point where he started to kind of slow down his career, or maybe it wasn't him, maybe it was the movie studios weren't casting him as frequently because he was getting a little bit older, although that is ridiculous because it's not like suddenly he was old. But I haven't seen I Was a Male War Bride, haven't seen Crisis, haven't seen, well, I saw a little bit of People Will Talk, but definitely not enough to have any comments about it, and I haven't seen Room for One More. Finally, in 1952, here's a movie that I have seen, Monkey Business, another crazy comedy in which he stars opposite Ginger Rogers. They are scientists, and they are running some kind of test, I think it's behavioral tests, on monkeys. They end up taking this stuff that makes them act like little kids. And that is really the highlight of the movie, is Cary Grant and Ginger Rogers running around like they're little kids, and it's really nuts. The movie co-stars Charles Coburn, I think, and also Marilyn Monroe. That was 1952. 1953, he was in Dream Wife, a film he starred in opposite Deborah Kerr. I haven't seen more than a couple minutes of that one, so I can't comment on that. 1955, he was in the third of his 4 Hitchcock films, To Catch a Thief, in which he starred opposite Grace Kelly. Like I said, a lot of people have asked me to review this one. A lot of people have told me it's one of their favorite Hitchcock films. To Catch a Thief is one that I would describe as a very stylish crime drama. Not so much a suspense film until the end, but definitely stylish. There are some very iconic outfits from Grace Kelly. 1957 was a busy year, though. He was in 3 films. 2 of them, The Pride and the Passion and Kiss Them For Me, I've not seen and I don't know anything about, but the one sandwiched in the middle is definitely one of the most famous Cary Grant movies, An Affair to Remember. He stars opposite Deborah Kerr for the second time as a playboy who meets Deborah Kerr on a cruise, and they fall in love, but they're both involved with other people, so they say, okay, let's figure this out, and if we still want to be with each other, we will meet in, 6 months? At the top of the Empire State Building. And everybody knows how this story turns out, right? Maybe you don't, I don't know. I feel like it's one of those movies that everybody's seen, but that might not be the case. An Affair to Remember is actually a remake of Love Affair. It was remade by its director, Leo McCarey. Love Affair is one of those 1939 films, and it's one of my favorite 1939 films. It starred Irene Dunne opposite Charles Boyer, and I love that movie. I did a review of it a few years ago, link to that in the description below. And in my review I said I like Love Affair better than An Affair to Remember. In full disclosure, I haven't seen An Affair to Remember, at least not in its entirety, in a long time, so maybe I would like it better if I were to see it now. Not that I don't like it. Don't get me wrong, I like it. It's a great movie, classic. I don't know. Love Affair hits me more heavily, and I don't know, I'm much more likely to cry watching Love Affair. 1958, he was in 2 films, and I haven't seen either one. They're pretty big Cary Grant movies. Indiscreet, in which he stars opposite Ingrid Bergman again, and Houseboat, in which he stars opposite Sophia Loren. I know about both movies, and I've seen a few minutes of both movies, but I haven't seen either one in their entirety. 1959, he was in the 4th and most well-loved of the films he did with Alfred Hitchcock, North by Northwest. I did a review of this movie, so you can go watch that if you want to hear more of my thoughts on that movie. Definitely a classic! 1959, he was also in a war comedy, Operation Petticoat, opposite Tony Curtis. I'm not the biggest fan of war comedies, so I have passed on this one many times. You can make an argument in its favor, and maybe I will reconsider, but I don't know, it always sounded pretty silly. I didn't like, oh goodness, what's it called? The one with Jack Lemmon and Henry Fonda and Jimmy Cagney. Mr. Roberts, is that what it's called? I didn't really like that movie, and I have always kind of assumed, which you shouldn't do, but I've always kind of assumed that Operation Petticoat would be similar to that, and so I just didn't want to see it. The funny thing about it, though, is the matchup of Cary Grant and Tony Curtis, who that same year co-starred opposite Jack Lemmon in Some Like It Hot, and famously did a not great, but definitely recognizable Cary Grant impression. In 1960, he was in The Grass is Greener, which I haven't seen. In 1962, he was in That Touch of Mink, a Doris Day movie, which I haven't seen. I haven't seen a lot of Doris Day's movies. Strangely, I have seen her in more movies that are kind of atypical for her, like The Man Who Knew Too Much and Midnight Lace. Anyway, 1963, Cary Grant starred opposite Audrey Hepburn in Charade. I think I mentioned Charade when I did my Audrey Hepburn video. I didn't talk about it a whole lot, though, because it wasn't one of my 3 favorites of her films. Charade is one of those movies that a lot of people think could have been a Hitchcock movie, because it has suspense and it has crime, but it also has a lot of charm and saucy wit. Despite the age difference, they are very good together, but I believe I read that Cary Grant felt kind of uncomfortable with it. At this point, he was an older man, and he really felt like, I'm not viable as a romantic lead, especially opposite some young thing. I think a lot of people disagree with that sentiment. They have no trouble buying Cary Grant at that point in his life as a potential love interest for Audrey Hepburn, but he was not comfortable with it, and he only made 2 more movies after that, and I have seen both of them. In 1964, he was in Father Goose, starring opposite Leslie Caron. He is the crankiest, crunchiest I have ever seen him. He's, this unwashed, unshaven guy who just wants to be left alone on this island, and then Leslie Caron and all these little kids show up, and they're trying to eke out an existence. He wants nothing to do with them, but they need help, and so he ends up dragged out of seclusion to help them, and it's a funny movie, and it's got some cute moments. And then in 1966, he did his last film, Walk, Don't Run, in which he has a supporting role. The leads are actually played by Samantha Eggar and Jim Hutton. I don't remember that being Samantha Eggar. Probably when I saw this movie, I didn't know who Samantha Eggar was. Even now, I've only seen her in one movie, The Collector, with Terrence Stamp, which is a really good but really creepy movie. Walk, Don't Run is a remake of the 1940-whatever comedy, The More the Merrier, starring Jean Arthur, Joel McCrea, and Charles Coburn as 3 people who end up having to share an apartment, and they're all in each other's way. The older guy, played by Charles Coburn and then by Cary Grant, sees the romantic tension between the 2 younger people and starts trying to pair them up. The More the Merrier is the better movie. It's funnier and it's more romantic, or sexier, you could say that. But when I saw Walk, Don't Run years ago, I liked it. It's very different to see Cary Grant in this older, non-romantic, non-starring role. You could take a kind of negative view of that, but when I saw it, I didn't, and I don't think that you should. I think he makes the most of the role, and it's a fun movie. It's also set during the Olympics, so the ending is kind of crazy. It involves speed walking, and I like that the last movie that Cary Grant did was a comedy, because those are my favorites of his movies. After that, Cary Grant retired from filmmaking, and unlike some people who retire and then after a few years they're coaxed out of it, he stayed retired and pretty much kept to himself. And as much as I think a lot of Cary Grant fans wish that he continued making movies and gave us more films to enjoy, I respect him for making that decision and sticking to it. And I don't know, having the humility and the self-awareness to be like, you know what, my prime is gone and I just want to live my life and not take subpar roles, which is what happened tragically with a lot of classic actors. They took roles in films that were very much beneath where they had been at their peak. I think it's nice that that didn't happen to Cary Grant. Maybe it never would have happened, but you never know. To bow out the way he did, there's something graceful about it, and that's certainly something you could say about Cary Grant as an actor, just as a iconic figure. He was very graceful and classy, and this video has turned out much longer than I expected, so I'm going to end it here. There are a lot of great Cary Grant movies out there to choose from, and if you haven't seen any Cary Grant movies, I don't know what you're doing with your life. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. Share your thoughts on Cary Grant and any of his movies down there. I look forward to reading what you have to say, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.